I've replayed that night so many times in my head, I swear I can smell the shrimp cocktail again. Not the fancy kind. The rubbery, limp ones they serve on plastic trays at corporate parties. That was my first clue I didn't belong there, the shrimp. And maybe the fact that Fiona was already halfway across the room when I finished parking the car. She didn't wait for me. Not even pretend to. Her boss, Gregory Hale, yeah, the guy who signs her paychecks, was hosting the party at his house. Technically a house, but more like a mansion with too many windows and not enough soul. Every corner was filled with wine glasses, fake smiles, and people who laughed a little too hard at Gregory's jokes. Fiona had talked about this guy like he was some marketing messiah. I just saw a guy with a crooked name tag and hands that wandered when he laughed. Anyway, this wasn't the first time I'd felt out of place around her colleagues, but it was the first time she made no effort to hide it. The second I stepped inside, she waved from a distance, not the warm kind of wave your wife gives when she's happy to see you. It was the kind you give your Uber driver when you're pretending to be nice. That hurt, but I smiled anyway. That's what I do. I make excuses. I let things slide. So I tried to blend in. I chatted with a guy from accounting who told me about his gluten intolerance for 15 minutes. I sipped wine even though I hate wine. I looked for Fiona, and when I finally spotted her, she was standing so close to Gregory that their drinks were touching. He whispered something to her, and she threw her head back laughing. She touched his arm. That wasn't the Fiona I knew, or maybe it was, and I just didn't want to believe it. I approached her twice that night. The first time, she introduced me as Caleb, my husband, like I was her mailman. The second time, she told me she'd be working the room and that I could grab a drink or whatever. So I did. I grabbed two. Then I grabbed my coat. I left without saying a word. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I just couldn't take it anymore. And 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A single text. Just one word. Come. No punctuation. No context. No apology. And that, I guess, is where this story really begins. When I got that text, come, I stared at it like it was written in another language. No punctuation, no please, no explanation. Just the kind of message you send to a delivery guy, not your husband who just walked out of your boss's party because you pretended he was invisible. I stood on the sidewalk outside Gregory Hale's monstrous house with my coat half on and half off, debating whether I should go back in. I looked ridiculous, I knew it, but I hesitated, because despite everything, some pathetic part of me still clung to the hope that maybe she noticed. Maybe Fiona had felt my absence. Maybe she realized she'd crossed a line. So I went back. The front door was cracked open. I could still hear the sound of jazz music and clinking glasses. When I stepped inside, no one noticed. No one ever does. But Fiona was nowhere in the crowd. That text wasn't meant for me to find her in the living room. It was an invitation, or maybe a command, to something quieter. I wandered down the hallway where coats hung sloppily on hooks and half-drunk glasses of wine sat abandoned on window ledges. The house was too big, and every hallway echoed. I passed a guest bathroom. Empty. A den. Also empty. Finally, I reached the back patio, and that's where I found her. Fiona was sitting alone on a bench under a string of white lights, legs crossed, wine in one hand, phone in the other. She didn't even look surprised when I walked up. She looked relieved. Like she had summoned me. Like she expected me to come. You came back, she said casually, like I'd just returned from getting napkins instead of storming out. I stood there, waiting. For an apology. For an explanation. For anything. Instead, she patted the empty space beside her and said, I didn't like how you left. It made me look bad. It made her look bad. Not, I'm sorry I ignored you. Not, I miss you. Just her image, always her image, that mattered. Still, I sat down. Because I'm a coward. Because some twisted part of me thought that if I just stayed quiet and listened, she'd come around. But she didn't. She leaned in and whispered, You're not making this easy. I asked her what this was supposed to be. Her answer? I'm trying to get promoted, Caleb. And you showing up like some jealous intern doesn't help. That hit like a slap. So that's what I was now, an obstacle. Something in the way of her career. Something disposable. I didn't even respond. I just stood up, turned around, and walked straight to the front door. But just before I reached it, I heard footsteps behind me. Fast ones. It was Gregory. He looked winded, like he'd jogged across the house to catch up to me. He smiled, not in a friendly way, more like a cat that just cornered a mouse. And then, with a voice so smug I can still hear it clearly, he said, She's really good at what she does, huh? Total team player. He winked. I said nothing. I couldn't. I opened the door, stepped out, and didn't stop walking until I hit the sidewalk. I didn't even look back to see if Fiona was following. She wasn't. But later that night, she sent another message. This time longer. And far worse. I got home that night and didn't turn on a single light. Just kicked off my shoes, sat down in the dark living room, and stared at the floor. Max, our Boston Terrier, jumped onto the couch beside me like he could tell something was wrong. He always could. Dogs are weirdly intuitive like that. My phone buzzed in my jacket pocket, and I just sat there for a minute, frozen. I already knew who it was, but part of me hoped it was anyone else. It wasn't. Fiona had sent me a second text. Please don't do anything stupid tonight. We'll talk tomorrow. That was it. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I love you. Just a condescending message that made it sound like I was some ticking bomb, some emotional liability she had to manage like a client account. And what killed me more than anything was how calm she sounded. Like none of this had even touched her. I didn't reply. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know what I felt. Anger? No. I wasn't angry. I was humiliated. And numb. Utterly numb. I kept playing Gregory's smirk over in my head. The way he winked, like he knew something I didn't. And Fiona's voice. I'm trying to get promoted. I sat in that silence for what felt like hours. Max eventually dozed off beside me, his chin resting on my leg. That little bit of warmth was probably the only thing keeping me from breaking apart completely. At some point, I must have fallen asleep on the couch because the next thing I knew, sunlight was bleeding through the blinds and my phone was buzzing again. This time it was a call. I let it ring. Then another call, this time from her sister, Aubrey. That got my attention. Aubrey and Fiona barely spoke. I picked up, groggy. Hey, I muttered. Her voice came through, sharp and fast. You okay? I blinked. What? Fiona's freaking out. She said you stormed out of the party. Said you might be reactive. What's going on? I felt something boil up in my throat. Not anger, not sadness, just this deep, bitter disbelief. She had made me the villain in her story, turned her coldness into my volatility. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd that I couldn't process it any other way. I'm fine, Aubrey, I said. Tell her I'm not doing anything stupid. I'm just done pretending. I hung up before she could ask what that meant. That day, Fiona didn't come home until almost 2 p.m. No explanation, no call ahead, just walked in like it was any other Saturday. She still had her party dress on, though it was wrinkled now and missing one of the earrings she'd worn. She looked at me with that tight-lipped expression she reserved for when she wanted to seem composed but was boiling underneath. We need to talk, she said. I didn't answer. I just nodded, sat down on the edge of the couch, and waited for her to speak. And what she said next changed everything. Because it wasn't about us. Not at first. It wasn't about our marriage, or my feelings, or even the way she'd humiliated me the night before. It was about Gregory. About the opportunity he'd offered her. About the conditions attached. And about what she had already agreed to. I sat there on the edge of the couch, hands clasped so tightly they were turning white, while Fiona paced the living room like a lawyer rehearsing for trial. She wasn't looking at me, not really. She was talking to herself, trying to frame it all in a way that would make it seem reasonable, justifiable, maybe even noble. He offered me a position, she said, wringing her hands. Vice President of Marketing. It's a massive jump, Caleb. It's what I've been working for years. I said nothing. I just watched her as she started to unravel. Her voice cracked on the word years like she wanted me to feel bad for her. As if that explained everything. As if ambition made betrayal less disgusting. And he made it clear, she continued, hesitating only a second too long, that he wants loyalty. He wants commitment. He wants someone willing to be flexible. I knew what she was trying to say without saying it, and it made my stomach twist into knots. My own wife, the woman who once held my hand during thunderstorms because she hated the sound of thunder, was now standing in front of me, justifying selling herself to her boss and dragging our marriage through the mud in the process. All for a title and a corner office. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her, to make her see what she was doing. But instead, I just sat there, blinking at her like an idiot, trying to hold myself together. You're not hearing me, Fiona said, a sharpness creeping into her voice. This is for us. This is for our future. Do you think I wanted to play nice with him? You think I wanted to dance on his arm all night? Smile at his jokes? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because I didn't even know where to start. She took my silence as permission. She sat down across from me, not close, not touching, like there was a canyon between us now. It's not emotional, she said. It's strategic. Strategic. Like our marriage was a chessboard and I was a pawn she was willing to sacrifice. Finally, I found my voice. Quiet. Almost too small to be heard. Did you? I couldn't even finish the sentence. I didn't want to hear the answer. But she answered anyway. Of course she did. No. Not yet. Not yet. The words hung between us like smoke. She hadn't betrayed me yet, but the idea was already alive, breathing, growing. She was already mentally making the trade, dignity for advancement, vows for validation. And the worst part? She looked at me like she expected me to understand, to nod and pat her hand and tell her it was okay, that it was for our future. Instead, I stood up. My body moved before my brain did. I'm going for a drive, I said, grabbing my keys from the table. Caleb, don't be dramatic, she snapped, but there was fear in her voice now. Maybe she realized she'd pushed too far. Maybe she thought I was about to go crash my car into a tree or something. I wasn't. I just needed to get out. Needed to breathe air that wasn't thick with her excuses. Max barked from the couch, confused. Fiona crossed her arms and glared at me like I was ruining her perfect narrative. I left without another word. As I pulled out of the driveway, I realized something bone deep. It wasn't about whether she had done it yet. It was about the fact that she was willing. And deep down, she didn't think I was strong enough to leave. She thought I'd stay. Be her loyal little trophy husband while she sold herself to the highest bidder. That was the moment, the exact second, I decided I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Not now. Not ever. I drove with no destination. Just kept my hands locked on the steering wheel and let the road decide for me. The world outside the windshield blurred into nothing, houses, trees, flashing signs, all of it passing like static. I wasn't really seeing any of it. I wasn't even really driving. It was like my body was on autopilot while my mind tried and failed to stitch itself back together. I ended up parking in front of an old diner on the edge of town. The kind of place where the vinyl booths are cracked and the coffee tastes like it's been brewing since Nixon was president. I didn't care. I just needed somewhere quiet, somewhere Fiona wasn't. I grabbed a corner booth and ordered black coffee from a waitress who didn't even look at me twice. Perfect. I wanted to be invisible. I sat there nursing that coffee, staring at my phone like it was some cursed object. Fiona hadn't texted again. No, I'm sorry. No, come home. It was like she thought the conversation was over, like I was supposed to be chewing on her speech and eventually come around, see it her way. Like I always did. I thought about leaving it all behind, her, the house, everything. Just starting over somewhere nobody knew my name. It was a fantasy. A coward's fantasy. But sitting there in that greasy diner, it felt more real than my life back home. That's when I heard it. Two men in the booth behind me, voices low, laughing under their breath like they shared some dirty secret. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, I swear. But when you hear your wife's name in a conversation, your ears sharpen whether you want them to or not. Fiona? She's playing the long game, man, one guy said, slurping his drink. Gregory's eating it up. The other guy chuckled. Yeah, she's good. Got him thinking she's going to be his special assistant. You know what that means. Laughter. Slapping palms. More laughter. And then, as if the universe hadn't tortured me enough, the first guy added, she's been working him for months. Acting single. Telling him she's just waiting for the right time to leave her boring husband. My heart stopped. Literally, it skipped a beat. Boring husband. That's what I was to her. A placeholder. A paperweight. Someone she'd outgrown and was too cowardly to ditch properly. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned bone white. For a second, I thought about getting up, turning around, and confronting them. Demanding to know who they were, how they knew her, what they meant by special assistant. But I didn't. Instead, I slid out of the booth, tossed some bills on the table, and walked out into the sunlight that suddenly felt way too bright and way too cruel. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there on the sidewalk, letting the realization settle into my bones like poison. She hadn't just drifted away from me. She had been planning her escape for months. The party wasn't the beginning. It was the finale. And I had been too stupid, too trusting, too boring to see it coming. I had no idea where to go next. I couldn't go home. Not yet. That house didn't feel like mine anymore. Maybe it never had. So I did the only thing I could think of. I went to the one person who always told me the truth, whether I wanted to hear it or not. My older brother. And the things he said to me that afternoon, they shattered every last illusion I still had. When I pulled into Jonah's driveway, He was already outside, standing by his beat-up truck, a beer in one hand, looking like he expected me. Maybe he did. Jonah's like that. Always had this sixth sense about when things were about to blow up. And looking at me that day, I must have looked like I was walking wreckage. I didn't even say hi, just leaned against the side of his truck, arms crossed, heart hammering against my ribs. He tossed me a beer. I caught it without thinking and cracked it open even though I didn't want it. It gave my hand something to do other than shake. "So," he said after a long minute, "you finally woke up." I flinched like he'd slapped me. "What's that supposed to mean?" Jonah shrugged, unbothered. "It means you've been playing house with a woman who's been halfway out the door for years. You just didn't want to see it." I wanted to argue, to defend Fiona, to defend myself, but I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew he was right. I knew it from the way Fiona stopped asking how my day was. From the way she started dressing up more for work events and stopped leaving sweet notes on the fridge. From the way she talked about Gregory with stars in her eyes like a teenage girl crushing on a boy band. I just didn't want to admit it. Jonah took a long pull from his beer, watching me with eyes that missed nothing. "She chose," he said finally. "She chose ambition over loyalty, pride over partnership. You were just background noise to her climb." I swallowed hard. The words hurt because they were true, and because Jonah didn't say them with malice. He said them like a man reading the weather report. It just was. "What do I do?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. He didn't even hesitate. "You leave." I shook my head automatically, the way you do when someone suggests something so big your brain can't process it. "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is," he cut in, his voice sharper now. "It's that simple, Caleb. It's just not easy." I stared at the ground, feeling 12 years old again, like I'd just been scolded for breaking a window. "I can't just walk away," I mumbled. "We built a life together. A house. A future." Jonah leaned closer, lowering his voice like he was letting me in on a secret nobody else knew. "You didn't build a life with her. You built it around her. There's a difference." That hit me harder than anything else. Because it was true. Everything in our life, the house, the vacations, the stupid Pinterest perfect photos on the fridge, it had all been curated around Fiona's dreams, Fiona's needs, Fiona's ambitions. I was just there, supporting cast. Jonah straightened, tossing his empty beer can into the trash with a clatter. "You need to figure out who you are without her, before she finishes hollowing you out." I nodded slowly, feeling something heavy and painful settle into place inside my chest. Not rage, not even sadness. Resolve. It was like realizing you've been standing in a burning house for years without even smelling the smoke. And finally deciding to walk out the front door. I drove back toward our neighborhood just as the sun was setting, the sky bleeding orange and purple across the horizon. I wasn't going home to fight. I wasn't going home to beg. I was going home to finish it. But when I pulled into the driveway, something strange was happening. There were two unfamiliar cars parked out front, and voices, loud, frantic voices, coming from inside the house. Something had happened while I was gone, and whatever it was about to change everything. I sat in my truck for a few seconds, engine still running, listening to the chaos coming from inside the house. Raised voices, the thud of something heavy being dropped, a door slamming. For a heartbeat, I wondered if I should even go in. Maybe it was better to just keep driving, disappear, leave Fiona to her disaster. But then I thought about everything I'd swallowed for the past 7 years, every smile I forced, every time I made myself smaller just so she could shine, and I realized, no, I needed to see this through. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I killed the engine, shoved the door open, and marched up to the front door without bothering to knock. The second I stepped inside, it was like stepping into a storm. Fiona was in the living room, mascara streaked down her face, pacing back and forth like a cornered animal. Two men in expensive suits were standing by the couch, looking uncomfortable as hell. One was Gregory Hale, her precious boss, and the other was some slick-looking guy I didn't recognize. Everyone froze when they saw me. For a moment, the whole world went silent, like the house itself was holding its breath. Fiona's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Gregory was the first to recover. He stepped forward, smoothing his jacket like he could iron out the tension in the room. "Caleb, right? Maybe you should." I cut him off with a look. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Whatever they thought they were doing here, it was about to get dragged into the light. Fiona took a shaky breath. I was going to tell you, she said, her voice cracking. I just needed more time. Tell me what? I asked quietly, stepping fully into the room now. Gregory shifted uncomfortably. This is a legal matter now. Fiona's actions have put her in a difficult position. I narrowed my eyes. What actions? That's when the other man, the one I didn't recognize, spoke up. Your wife forged company documents, Caleb. Financial records. To make it look like she closed deals she didn't. The room spun for a second. I had expected betrayal. Emotional betrayal. But this was criminal. Fiona's face crumpled. I had to, she whispered. You don't understand. Gregory said I needed numbers. Results. I couldn't wait. Gregory raised his hands defensively. I never told her to forge anything. I could see it then. Clear as day. Gregory had dangled a carrot in front of her, knowing full well she'd do anything to grab it. Then the second she got her hands dirty, he stepped back, washed his hands, and let her drown. I stared at Fiona. Really stared at her. And for the first time in years, I saw her without the rose-colored glasses. She wasn't the woman I fell in love with. She wasn't even a stranger. She was a warning, a cautionary tale. And the sad thing was, even now, part of her still thought she could talk her way out of it. Fix it. Spin it. This can still work, she said desperately, stepping toward me. We can get through this. If you just stand by me. I took a step back. Not out of anger. Out of sadness. There was no we anymore. The man I used to be, the one who would have fought for her, no matter how dirty she played, he was already dead. I'm not going down with you, Fiona, I said softly. Not this time. Her face crumpled completely then. But I didn't stay to watch her fall apart. I turned around, walked out the door, and didn't look back. Outside, the evening air felt cold and clean, like a baptism. For the first time in years, I could breathe. But this wasn't over yet. Because I still had one last thing to do before I could finally close the chapter on Fiona for good. And it was going to hurt her in a way she never saw coming. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I drove aimlessly through the city, past places that used to mean something. The park where Fiona and I had our first real date. The coffee shop where we used to sit for hours, laughing about nothing. Every street felt haunted by a ghost version of us, a version that never really stood a chance. By the time the sun started creeping over the horizon, painting the sky a tired gray, I knew what I had to do. I went home, not to fight, not to beg, not even to talk. Just to gather the few things that still belonged to me. I packed quietly. A duffel bag, some clothes, Max's leash. I didn't take anything we bought together. It didn't feel like it was mine anymore. Fiona wasn't there when I returned. She was probably dealing with Gregory, or lawyers, or maybe just hiding. It didn't matter. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. No note, no speech. Just the ring, cold and still, like the final punctuation mark on a story that should have ended long before. Max jumped into the passenger seat without hesitation when I opened the door. Loyal to the end. Part of me wished I could be that simple, that sure. As I drove away, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel free. I felt hollow, like a house after the furniture's been stripped out, still standing, but echoing and empty. In the weeks that followed, I moved into a small apartment across town. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Quiet, bare walls, second-hand couch. No photos of fake smiles. No heavy silences. Just space to breathe. I heard through mutual friends that Fiona lost her job. Gregory denied everything. She tried to fight back, but the company cut her loose fast, quicker than I thought they would. She didn't even get a severance. Just an email and a security escort to the door. For a while, she tried to reach out. Texts, emails, even a handwritten letter, begging for forgiveness, promising she could be different, that she'd been scared, desperate, lost. But the thing was, I wasn't angry anymore. I just didn't care. Sometimes, I wonder if that's worse. I didn't block her. I didn't scream at her. I just didn't answer. I let her words drift into silence, the same way she let our marriage drift into nothing. Some nights, when the city lights flicker outside my window and Max snores softly at my feet, I think about what we had, or what I thought we had. I wonder if there was ever really a moment when she loved me the way I loved her. And if there was, when exactly did it end? Was it at Gregory's party? Or was it long before, on some random Tuesday, when I was too busy trusting her to notice she had already let go? I guess I'll never know. And maybe that's the saddest part of all.